going on, Jerome's? So I forgot that summer is almost here. Oh, it's cold and rainy here in the great state of Minnesota today, but it's almost like Andy Reid Hawaiian shirt time. Although this isn't like a fun Hawaiian print. Like this is like a shirt that like a dude wears to his third wedding. It's a destination wedding. It's going to work out this time with the 26-year-old. Anyways, but your Minnesota Vikings are looking to draft their future franchise quarterback, and whether it's going to be May or Daniels, McCarthy, Penix, blah, 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 all the talk. But to move forward, we have to look back. And your Minnesota Vikings have damned 27 souls to oblivion, selecting 27 quarterbacks in the draft since their inception in 1961. They've never drafted a quarterback in the top 10. It certainly could change this year if the Vikings trade up. So let's run through some of these names. And so a notable name that's missing, I had to look this up. So Rich Gannon started his career with the Vikings and then obviously went on to be league MVP 2002. As well as Super Bowl participant. But he was technically drafted in the fourth round 1987 by the Patriots and then traded to the Vikings before the start of the season. So, yeah. But also, back in the day, the draft was very unserious. I mean, there used to be 20 rounds. And after the merger, so we didn't get to the 7-round format until 1993, which is kind of funny. But, I mean, the Vikings drafted Bob Lee out of Pacific with pick 441. Hey, Brock Purdy, you were pick 262. F you. Those are rookie numbers. Gotta get those up, man. Also, Bob Lee actually started like 11 games for the Vikings. Played and also played in like 60 games. So it happens, man. But going back to the top, Francis Jerome Ezekiel Tarkenton, the scrambling, gambling QB coming out of Georgia. So he was number 29 overall pick, but in the third round. This is before the merger, so there's 14 teams. He was the first selection in the third round. And Tarkenton was his team's George Washington. Took the Vikings to 3 out of the 4 Super Bowls. Joe Cap had the other, and he was great. And basically, we've just been chasing that dragon ever since. We've been chasing that high. Someone called Mike McFarland. Also, it's funny. You go back to the way that scouting used to be back in the day. I mean, sometimes you'd pick up like a draft guide, and teams would just select it because there's a lot of players that are basically just territorial picks, like Western Illinois, Gophers, Wisconsin, Illinois, Northern Iowa. Basically, like just take the kid that's around here. Mike McFarland, John Hankinson, a former Golden Gopher, 8th round pick, number 100 overall. Okay, Jim Haney from Westchester. I don't even know what that is. I mean, I forget. There was a quarterback. I want to say it was Dave Craig. I know he played for the Seahawks, but it was a quarterback named Dave Craig where not only does his alma mater not have a football team anymore, his college doesn't exist. I want to say that that's true. I'm going to double check that later. But Bullet Bob Lee, Brian Dowling from Yale. Yes. Then second rounder, 51, Bill Capelman out of Florida State, really getting after things. 414, Neil Graff from Wisconsin, stupid Badger from back in the day. Mike Wells from Illinois, Bill Salmon from Northern Iowa. He was Kurt Warner broke all of his passing records. I completely made that up. I do not care. Then, 1977, the Vikings finally got serious about some things. So, first round pick, 27 overall, Tommy Kramer out of Rice University. So, 2-minute Tommy, 494 Tommy, Minnesota Miracle Tommy, Miracle at the Met Tommy, rather. Tommy Kramer is great. Plus, if you've ever gone to a bar in the great state of Minnesota, chances are you've run into Tommy Kramer. He likes to have a good time. Steve Dills. Steve Dills wasn't bad. Steve Dills worked it in there, 4th round pick, 97 out of Stanford from back in the day. He was the guy for the Cardinal before John Elway came on in. Also, Steve Dills worked with Bill Walsh back in the day. Yeah. 1981, 8th round pick, 210. Wade Wilson, Deadpool, Texas A&M Commerce, not the Aggies, Texas A&M Commerce. Wilson was decent for a hot second here with the Vikings as well as the Cowboys. And then 1985, 6th round pick, 142, Steve Bono out of UCLA. Now, Bono went on to a pretty decent career. Like, he was a backup quarterback for the Niners on a couple of the Super Bowls. I think he started for the Chiefs for a while too. Although, I mean, during this time, I feel like Steve should have really leaned into the branding and changed his name. You know, like how Joe, when he was at Notre Dame, Joe Theismann changed his name to Joe Theismann because it rhymed with Heisman, and he just ran with that. Like Steve Bono should have ran with a U2's emergence and gone with Steve Bono. So I've always kind of liked U2, but they soured me when they had that album that was just on everyone's phone and iPod that you couldn't get rid of. All right, so Brent Peasy from Montana, sure. Brad Johnson, getting ourselves some BJs in 1992, 9th-round pick at 227. Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl in 2002, defeating former Vikings quarterback Rich Gannon. It's good times. Also, that's not a bad parlay. So Brad Johnson from Florida State, 9th-round pick, and then after 98, after Randall Cunningham had established himself, Brad Johnson was traded to Washington for a first, second, and third-round pick. And the first-round pick was number 11, and that flipped into Dante. So basically, Brad Johnson got turned into Dante Culpepper and a second and third rounder. That ain't bad. Gino Torretta from Miami. So Gino was so first off, it annoys me whenever they list Miami, Florida, or Miami, Ohio. Miami, Florida is going to be Miami. Miami, Ohio, I understand. Like Red Hawks, hey, you're Miami, Ohio. The other place is Miami. Don't have to designate Florida. That's just the U being the U. That's right. But Gino Torretta was like the OG, just the quarterback driving the bus. We're surrounded by talent, and Gino Torretta won the Heisman just like dinking and dunking all over the place. Whatever. Chad May out of Kansas State. I remember Chad May so Tecmo's Super Bowl, I would always replace Warren Moon with Chad May, and I would like jack up his stats and stuff. It'd be great. And then a 4-year interregnum. Eventually, the Vikings selected Dante Culpepper 11th overall in the first round. That's the highest drafted quarterback in team history. And then, Dante was great. You know, get your roll on, baby. Him and Randy Moss doing some really good things during the Mike Tice era. And then 2006. After Brad Childress took over, his second. Did they have a first-round pick in 2006? No, because that was the Chris Cook. Because I think they traded back. Doesn't matter. So T-Jack, rest in power, 64 overall, the last pick of the second round. The pride of Alabama State, go Hornets. Didn't work out. Then Tyler Thigpen from Coastal Carolina. John David Booty. Again, don't trust anyone who goes by 3 names because they're probably serial killers. JDB from USC was Booty. Then back-to-back first-rounders in 2011, 2014. Christian Ponder, number 12 overall, the second highest drafted quarterback in team history. Out of Florida State, didn't work out. Then Ted Bridgewater, 32nd overall. Vikings traded back in 2014, and it would have worked out except Teddy's leg fell off, and it's unfortunate. And then the last 3 quarterbacks, sort of whatever. So 7th-round pick Nate Stanley out of Iowa. So I feel like Nate Stanley was from like southwestern Wisconsin, and then he went to Iowa. So that's just like the parlay of no. Then 2021 3rd-round pick 6'6" overall Kellen Mond at Texas A&M proper. I mean, he signed with the Saints. And then last year, a 5th rounder, the first quarterback of the Kevin O'Connell, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah regime, Jaren Hall, the Mormon missile, 27,000 years old, coming out of BYU. And he we'll always have that second drive against Atlanta, man. But then the first half against Green Bay, where stepping up in the pocket, had that deep shot ready to go, and then whack. But I still think that Jaren Hall could develop into a decent backup, right? But, I mean, the Vikings going to be taking a swing on a quarterback in all likelihood. But despite all my roots, I showed up in boots and ruined your black tie affair. Before we move forward, we got to look back. And, I mean, it's kind of – but also, I mean, the Vikings haven't really drafted busts. I mean, well, first off, you have to spend a high draft capital on quarterbacks for them to be considered busts. I mean, people are calling Jaren Hall a bust last year's like, how could a 5th-round pick be a bust? It's ridiculous. But only 4 first-round picks, which is certainly interesting. Your best quarterback was a 3rd-round pick from your inaugural season. So hopefully whoever the hell this is, probably going to be a top 10 pick. And hopefully we're going to be good to go for a while. So there you go. Anyways, that's it. Looking back at the Vikings quarterback draft history, you guys know what to do. You're the best. Skull production value.